Good evening. Good evening. Now, I know we can do better than that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Much better. But let's take a step back and look at what just happened there. Normally we hear, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. But how many of us really stop to think about what it means to be addressed with the title of lady or of gentleman? My name is Ethan Turner. I am the founder of an organization called the League of Gentlemen and the CEO of Glimpse, a new perspective. I first stumbled across the question of what is a gentleman in my sophomore year of high school, where I founded a club called the League of Gentlemen. The club originated in Woodbury High School, a school of about 2,000 students in Woodbury, Minnesota, during the November of 2012. It served as a place for men to come together to decide how to increase chivalry in our community. Our motto was, chivalry is not dead. Well, the organization that started off as a group of about 50, within weeks turned into a group of 5 young men. And at that point, I really had to determine if the vision of chivalry being alive was even true. I mean, I read books about knight-saving damsels. I held doors open for girls. And I mean, when it wasn't negative 60 degrees outside in Minnesota, I would even pump my mom's gas. But that's not every day. So, and so, I thought that I was a gentleman because of these things. But the organization moving from 50 members to a group of about 5 or 6 really showed me that I had taken on an endeavor that was larger than I had bargained for. So, the following year, in 2013, the remaining 5 of us got back together, and we sat down and really had to start delving in and defining what it meant to be a part of our organization beyond chivalry. And what we came up with was 3 terms in Latin, because Latin just tends to be the language for making creeds and things like that. And what we came up with was diverse, classis, and infectus. Diverse means diversity. And when we say diversity, we mean diversity of the mind. Because the more mental backgrounds and experiences that you bring to a conversation, the more rich and cultured and knowledgeable it truly is. The second term, classis, means class, but not in the sense of dress, in the sense of a rank or of a hierarchy of soldiers. And we use the term class because we believe that the gentleman is a class of men that holds himself to a higher standard. The last term that we use is infectus. And infectus means ambition. And any person here who defines himself as ambitious understands that ambition is not about the self. It's about looking for the greater good in the world. Well, when the 5 or 6 of us came together and finally knocked this out, we said, okay, we've got a way to define who we are. We noticed something. This creed kind of naturally aligned with who we were as people. And in order for us to get members, we had to find one that didn't necessarily align with who we were, but who we wanted to be. And we were all doing extraordinary things. My sophomore year of high school and my senior year of high school, I was able to teach myself Italian. I was able to teach myself to play the piano. And I was able to write my first movie script. And all of the other founders of the organization were doing things of comparable value. But what we once again realized was that because we naturally aligned to this creed, we were still missing something. We were missing what we started off with, chivalry. And so we had to get back together again. We sat down for a nice little 5-hour conversation and we said, what can we make? What name can we make? What vision can we write that's going to define our organization? And we saw it in just bright shining lights. It said, the League of Gentlemen creates world leaders and modern gentlemen. But what in the world does writing a movie script, learning a language, or learning to play piano have to do with being a gentleman? And if they do have anything to do with being a world leader, we're only accomplishing one portion of our vision. So we had to say, you know, what is it that makes a modern gentleman? And so in order to start attacking that, we actually ended up graduating. And most people who graduate, you're always told you're going to find new friends. You're not going to be with the same people that you grew up with. When you go to college, you're not going to be with them. Well, for us, that was wrong. When we got to college, our foundation for the organization and for our friendship grew. And we did that through several things. The first thing that we did was we established a system of communication amongst each other that we call daily drivers. They're emails that we send out to each other saying, hey, how are you doing? How is your vision progressing? Are you almost there? And it keeps us up to date on what the person's doing and if they're progressing in the vision of the organization. The second thing we did was we expanded. By separating and going to different colleges, we were able to say, hey, I know this guy. He'd like this organization, and bring them in. We went from a group of 5 to a group of 22, and now we're at an international level of 30 members. The next step that we took was we became leaders in our society, leaders in our community, leaders in our school, leaders in our workplace. And through this leadership, we were able to start branding ourselves as not just nice-dressed young men, but as leaders, and eventually to become world leaders. The final thing that we did was begin to establish a pecking order in our organization, a way to define who had gone the farthest to accomplish the vision. And what we established was that the top tier was the modern gentleman. Beneath that was the knight, beneath that was the squire, and beneath that was the page. As the founder of my own organization, I'm only one rank above the bottom. I'm a squire. And I say that because we all realized that in order for us to achieve this goal of the modern gentleman, it had to be something for each of us to strive for. It had to be something that we had to define and understand for ourselves. And so in doing that, we had to actually define it. And so what we saw was that the term modern, before anything, any word that you find, means that there was an older version of it. So we said, let's start there. So we once again moved on to our next year. And in the beginning of my sophomore year this year, in the fall semester of 2014, we sat down for a 5-hour conversation on the phone again. And this 5-hour conversation we were able to come up with a couple of characteristics of what the modern gentleman is. But before we came up with that, we had to look at what the old version was. According to Oxford Dictionary, a gentleman is a man who is chivalrous, courteous, honorable, or lives a lavish lifestyle of leisure and of wealth. And both these definitions really align with kind of what we were looking for in individuals. Chivalrous, courteous, honorable. I mean, I'm definitely a proponent of something, I'd love to be known as one of those 3. The last one, hey, wealthy, that's what I want to be wealthy. And so, those really align with some of our visions, some of our personal goals. But we understood that something was still missing, and it couldn't quite define our organization. So we took another step back. In sociology, there's a term called cultural lag. And what cultural lag is when technology advances so far ahead that culture doesn't quite catch up. And it has to adapt. The term was first coined in 1922 by William F. Ogburn. And what he believed was that cultural lag is a critical ethical issue. Because failure to adopt and adapt modern technology to culture leads to an increase in social conflict and a decrease in social solidarity. And so after realizing this, we said, well, what's lagging in our culture, the reason there's not a modern gentleman? So we took another step back again. We said, what advents, what technological advancements are the changing parts of society? And for us, that's the internet, and that's social media. So we broke those down and said, what does the internet and what does social media bring us? And that answer is connection, globalization, being able to reach out in 1 second to someone across the world and become their friend, and become their ally. And so in seeing this, we understood that the main difference between the modern gentleman and the Oxford Dictionary gentleman was this connectivity with the world, this ability to be a global individual. And so, after realizing that, we sat down and came up with 21 characteristics that are key in not only just being a modern gentleman, but that are applicable to anyone in becoming a successful person, whether male or female. Here they are. The first one for becoming a modern gentleman alone is separate from the rest, is that you have to be a man. Because who am I and who are we as an organization to say that these following characteristics are the definition of the modern lady, or the definition of the modern woman? I don't have that right. As a man, my characteristics suit men, not women. But the following ones will help. They'll be able to adapt to successful people or successful women and men. The next one is that you be of any race and of any size. After that, it's that you're well-mannered for any occasion. If I'm going to go salsa, I've got my salsa on. I've got my salsa mentality as well. So I know that I'm going into this prepared for salsa. Not just mannered in dress, but mannered in mind. The next term that we use to define the modern gentleman is well-roundedness. And that's a very broad term. So we broke that down into 4 more categories. We said, the first one, world cognizant. An individual who is world cognizant is able to make up that gap between the cultural lag and say, I'm going to be a gentleman in Africa, in France, in Italy, in Dubai. I'm going to be a gentleman wherever I go. and be able to incorporate all the characteristics that are required in that. The second one is that you be goal-oriented, because a man who is goal-oriented sees a vision. And we believe that a modern gentleman is visionary. He sees the future. If not the future, he sees what's coming next and how he can get there. And he plans that out for himself through goals. The third part of well-roundedness is that you are adaptable. Because in order to be able to go to Africa and go to Dubai and go to all these countries and change who you are and become this gentleman, you have to be able to adapt. The final part of well-roundedness is that you're curious. And so curious that you're able to say, I freaking hate math, but I love to study it. And when you can reach that point where you hate math, but you love to study it, you're able to learn anything. If I said, go read this 1,000-page book, I hate reading. Well, I love to study. I love to learn. That is what curiosity brings you. The next characteristic after well-roundedness is determination. And determination is the grit. It's being able to get down on your knees and say, I don't care how low I'm at, I'm going to keep pushing through this. And that's one factor that is definitely incorporated in all successful people, as well as the modern gentleman. The next part of modern gentleman is that you be respectful. And not just respectful to your parents, not just respectful to your brothers and your sisters and your friends, but respectful to ideologies, respectful to culture, respectful towards the world. And what we mean in that is that you're able to see two sides of an argument and say, I can respect their opinion and I can respect my opinion, and find a central agreement between the two and a solution for any argument or any dispute that comes up. The next characteristic of the modern gentleman is that you be holistically intelligent. And most people associate holistic intelligence with IQ. And we definitely don't want that to be the definition of the modern gentleman. IQ is only a portion of who you can become, because you can raise your IQ, you can shrink your IQ, you can do a whole lot of things with it. And so in order to define holistic intelligence, we broke it down into two categories. There's mental and there's social. And when we say mental, that's the ability to be clever and creative. When we say social, that's the ability to be able to be socially aware and socially conscious of what's happening on around you. You don't have to be an extrovert to be a gentleman. You just have to know what's going on around you and how you can maneuver through society in order to either better it or make a decision in it. The next characteristic of the modern gentleman, there's two, is that you have self-control and that you have self-awareness. And in self-control, you're able to say, my vision is that way, from the goal-orientedness. And there's something going on over there. But I'm going to focus on what's going this way because I have self-control and I'm going to move towards my goal. Self-awareness is the ability to say, I see everything that's going on around me. I know what characteristics I want to have in a person, and I know how I'm going to incorporate those in myself. And so you acknowledge that you're trying to do that, and you do it purposefully, and you're knowledgeable about the fact that it's happening. The next characteristic is that you're socially responsible. There's so many things that happen in the world, and we just say, it's his fault, it's her fault. Well, as a person who is successful, or a person who wants to be a modern gentleman, you recognize that any issue that's happening in the world, you as a member of the world, as a member of society, have some value, you have some attraction to it, and that you are responsible for what's happening, and that you can go out and change it. The next characteristic of the modern gentleman is that you are honorable, or that you are reputable. And that goes back to the Oxford Dictionary, that you have reached this level of class, or reached this level of success that you could say, I've made it. But at the same time, you're modest about it, and you're selfless about it, because your goals are about changing the world, not about changing your wealth. It's about changing the world and being able to succeed with that manner. The next characteristic is that you're loyal. Not just loyal to your friends, loyal to your country, but loyal to the world and its progression. And the final characteristic that separates the great man, the successful man, from the normal man is gentle man. And that's chivalry and chivalrous. And in being chivalrous, respecting women, respecting others around you. And if you're a woman, respecting the other women around you. And if you're a man, respecting anyone around you, as well as women respecting anyone around you. And that's the difference between being a great, successful person who's a man and being a gentleman. So with all these characteristics, who in the world could possibly have them all? The answer is you. And I've come up with 10 different ways to be able to do that. The first one, take up leadership roles in your community, in your society, in your workplace, or at your school. Most of these characteristics simply come from leadership. The second thing, study something you're unfamiliar in. Like I said before, I hate math, but I love to study it. And if you can reach that point, you can learn anything. The third thing is that you develop a philanthropic spirit, that you're no longer focused on how can I increase my wealth, but how can I increase the wealth of the people around me. The fourth thing is that you are always looking to push yourself. You're looking to better yourself. And in doing that, you're saying, I'm here today. What can I do to get better tomorrow? And if you constantly are doing that, you're constantly progressing. Following that, you're looking for the best in the world. Not just in the nation, or not just in the people around you, but you're looking for the best in the world and what can come out of it. And following that, we've got setting annual goals. By setting annual goals, you're able to say, this is where I want to be by this age. This is where I want to be by this time. And you're able to set increments to be able to constantly progress towards it. The next characteristic that you can do is to find individuals who agree with you and want to succeed at the same amount. And many people call this a mastermind group. And a mastermind group is a group of individuals who just want to be successful at the same level. So they work together, they push each other to reach this level of success. The next thing that you can do is to be able to be self-reflective. Look at yourself and look at where you are and how you got to where you are. And in doing so, you're able to see who you are, best ways that you learn, and the best ways to be able to adapt into society. The next thing, second to last thing, is that you're able to look at two sides of an argument. Start looking at two sides of an argument and say, how did this person arrive at this conclusion? How did I arrive at my conclusion? And in doing that, you get to learn more about the person that you're arguing with than just simply battling back and forth, and able to arrive at much richer, much better, and much more shareable conclusions. The final thing that I'll say is just have fun. Because if you're not having fun, how can you possibly be succeeding in what you're doing? It's almost impossible to just be doing something and not having fun and still succeeding. But I have a bonus. Be respectful towards women. Because in being respectful towards women, that is what takes you from being a great man, a successful man, a great lady, to being a gentleman, or the modern lady, possibly. So if you're willing to do this with me, I took a pledge in order to start incorporating these characteristics into my life. And I'll recite it here, and if you want to talk to me after, sure, why not? I pledge allegiance to the world, filled with many diverse peoples and cultures, and to its development, as long as it stands, all nations unified equitably with love and equality for all. Thank you.